There is a particular kind of silence that exists right before something catastrophic happens. It is not the silence of peace. It is not the silence of calm. It is the silence of the universe, holding its breath, pressing both hands over its mouth, desperately trying not to laugh at what is about to unfold. Commander Marcus Thrain stood on the bridge of the Imperial warship Eternal Supremacy and stared at the tactical display with the quiet confidence of someone who has never once in his life been genuinely surprised. Before him, rendered in cool blue light, floated Armstrong Station. A small thing, a human thing, 312 souls who had spent the last 2 years mining asteroids for rare Earth elements in a system the Vorkai Empire had just decided belonged to them. Marcus was tall, 7 feet of pale, four-armed grace. 3 eyes arranged in a perfect triangle on his narrow face tracked the data with the precision of a species that had evolved on a world with no natural predators. No fear, no doubt, just the mathematical certainty of superior firepower. 14 warships surrounded the station like a tightening fist. 2 carriers hung in the black, their bellies full of strike craft. 1 support vessel waited in reserve. It was in every tactical sense a hammer being used to flatten a grape. What Marcus did not know, what he refused to know, was that the grape had opinions. "Report," he said. His voice carried the particular flatness of a being who considers emotional inflection something lesser species indulge in. Second Officer Kelrick Shen straightened at his station. Kelrick was wiry where Marcus was statuesque, nervous where Marcus was calm. He had the look of someone who had read too much and slept too little. His 3 eyes flicked to the sensor readout, then back to his commander with the expression of a man watching someone walk confidently toward an unmarked hole in the ground. "Armstrong Station is within weapons range, Commander. Population estimate 312 humans. 6 defensive turrets classified as light armament. No warships currently docked." Marcus permitted himself something almost resembling a smile. Almost. He considered full smiles a waste of facial muscles. 300 humans, he repeated. Scientists, miners. They have been here for 2 of their years studying rocks. "Rare element deposit, sir. The asteroid belt in this system appears rich in irrelevant." Marcus folded 2 of his forearms behind his back, keeping the other 2 loose at his sides. He had practiced this pose in front of a mirror for years. It conveyed authority and relaxation simultaneously. "What matters is that they are here, in territory the Empire now claims. Signal the fleet." The fleet was not small. 14 warships that had conquered 6 systems and brought 11 worlds under Vorkai rule. The kind of assemblage you bring when you want to make a point, not when you actually expect resistance. Marcus had made many points in his 30-year career. This would be another. What he did not see, what the sensors showed, but his mind dismissed, was a small irregularity in the asteroid belt. A gravitational reading. Slightly wrong. Real asteroids do not produce gravitational signatures like that. Real asteroids do not have active power cores that have been running silent, impatient for 182 days. Kelrick saw it. Kelrick had been seeing it for weeks. Kelrick had flagged it in 3 separate reports, each marked urgent, each dismissed as dramatic overthinking by an analyst who read too many intelligence files and not enough tactical doctrine. The truth was that Kelrick had read the intelligence files. All of them, every page, including the appendices, including the footnotes, including the footnote that was itself a footnote buried at the bottom of page 412, which simply read, "Do not engage. See all previous pages for reasons why." Then read them again. He had tried to tell Marcus. 3 times, formal written warnings. Each time the response had been the same. Stop being dramatic. Now watching 14 warships align for an attack on 300 unarmed humans, Kelrick gripped the edge of his console with 3 of his 4 hands and thought about that footnote. About the 17 minutes of human laughter at the Interspecies Summit. About Ambassador Victoria Hayes and the things she had said that made the entire diplomatic gallery go quiet. About the words that no one had wanted to believe. "Prepare transmission," Marcus said. "Standard surrender protocol." The communications officer, a young female named Sitara, who had graduated top of her class and believed in the Empire, with the fervor of the newly commissioned, opened the channel with crisp efficiency. Marcus stepped forward. The bridge lights dimmed slightly, a theatrical touch he had added to his flagship systems. When he spoke, his voice carried across space on all frequencies, translated automatically into the human standard language. Attention, human station. You are within territory now claimed by the Vorkai Empire. You will surrender your installation. Power down all systems and await processing. Resistance will be met with immediate and total destruction. He paused. Let the words settle. Let the fear build. You have 3 of your minutes to comply. The channel closed. Silence filled the bridge, the comfortable silence of a job about to be completed. Marcus returned to his command throne carved from a single piece of stone brought from the Vorkai homeworld and settled into it with the satisfaction of a predator who has cornered its prey. Kelric looked at his sensor display, looked at the gravitational anomaly that had been sitting in the asteroid belt for half a year, looked at the tactical projection that showed Armstrong Station completely surrounded, completely outgunned, completely helpless, and thought, this is the hole. We are walking into the hole. On Armstrong Station, in a small room that smelled powerfully of recycled air and burnt coffee, Dr. Elena Rourke was elbow deep in a geological core sample and not paying attention to anything else at all. Elena was 43 years old, had 3 degrees in mineralogy, and possessed the kind of focus that made other scientists feel personally inadequate. She had been cataloging mineral strata for 6 hours straight, 4 cups of coffee, 1 protein bar that she was fairly certain had expired 8 months ago. She felt fine. She felt, in fact, excellent. The alarm changed that, not immediately because the first alarm was the passive sensor ping, which sounded like a polite doorbell. Elena had set that particular alert to silent 3 weeks ago. The asteroid belt kept triggering it with debris drift, so she missed it entirely. The second alarm was louder. This was the proximity alert, the one that meant something large and probably hostile had entered close-range scanning distance. Elena looked up from her sample, blinked at the overhead of the screen, saw the number 14 next to the word warships, and experienced the unique cognitive dissonance of someone whose entire world has just shifted categories from scientific research to immediate mortal peril. She stared at this for a moment, then she picked up her coffee, took a slow sip, set it down with deliberate care, and hit the station-wide intercom. "Hey," she said in the tone of someone reporting a minor but mildly annoying inconvenience. "We've got company, armed company. Someone want to look at this." In the station's small command hub, 3 people were already looking at it. Commander Dorian Kane stood at the central display with his hands clasped behind his back, studying the Vorkai fleet with the very particular stillness of someone who has been in bad situations before and has learned to stop flinching. He was compact, broad-shouldered, early 50s, with gray at his temples, and the relaxed posture of a man who had spent 15 years as a Navy SEAL before a knee injury sent him to colonial service. He had seen worse odds. Not much worse, but worse. To his left, Specialist Amy Chen worked her communications console with rapid, efficient keystrokes, sending signals on every available frequency. To his right, Dr. David Okafor, the station's chief scientist, had the look of a man who had just remembered he left something important on the stove, except the stove was his entire life. "They're hailing us," Amy said. Her voice was steady, trained. "Put it through." The Vorkai ultimatum came through with crystal clarity. Dorian listened without moving, counted the ships on his display, noted their formation, recognized the flagship configuration, did the math in his head. 3 minutes. He looked at Amy, looked at David, looked back at the display showing 14 warships arranged in a kill pattern around a research station that had 6 turrets designed to shoot debris, not warships. "Okay, yeah," he said quietly. "Here is what we're going to do." He walked to his console, did not power anything down, did not begin evacuation protocols, did not surrender. Instead, he opened a channel. Not to the Vorkai fleet, not to any nearby human vessel. A specific channel, encrypted, quantum locked. The kind of channel that goes to a set of coordinates exactly 4 light minutes away, where something had been sitting very quietly for 182 days, disguised brilliantly as an unremarkable chunk of asteroid. He sent one message. 11 words. Armstrong Station. Hostile fleet. 14 warships. Requesting immediate support. Authorization Kilo 7. Then he closed the channel and turned back to the display. Amy replied to the Vorkai, Tell them we need more time to gather our personnel for orderly evacuation. Amy glanced at him. Do we know, Dorian said. But they don't know that. Sir, they gave us 3 minutes. I know. Buy me 5. Be polite. Sound scared. You're a scientist facing 14 warships. Shouldn't be hard. Amy's fingers moved. The reply went out transmitted on the same frequency the Vorkai had used. Her voice, when it played through the station's speakers as a recording, shook just enough to sound genuine. Vorkai Fleet, this is Armstrong Station. We're civilians. We need time to gather our people, please. We're not military. Just give us a few more minutes. Perfect. Dorian watched the chronometer. Watched the seconds tick down. Watched the Vorkai fleet hold position confident in their overwhelming superiority. And thought about the thing hiding in the asteroid belt. The thing that had been there for half a year waiting. The thing that had a name, a crew of 847, and a directive that was very, very clear about what happened when someone pointed weapons at unarmed civilians. He thought about the footnote. On the bridge of eternal supremacy, Marcus received the human response with the patience of a being who has all the weapons and therefore all the time in the world. They are stalling, Kelrick said quietly. Of course they are stalling, Marcus replied. They are frightened. Let them have their moment of hope. It makes the lesson more complete. Kelrick opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Sir, the intelligence files on human military doctrines suggest a response capability that we may have underestimated. Their colonial defense protocols include what they call a rapid response package, which is described in the files as Kelrick. Sir, are you about to quote a footnote at me again? A pause. Generally, sir, yes. Then I am going to stop you there. Marcus looked back at his display. 14 fully armed vessels against 300 scientists with mining equipment. At what point in this arithmetic does the footnote become relevant? Kelrick looked at the sensor readings, looked at them very carefully. He was looking specifically at the gravitational anomaly he had noticed 6 weeks ago, the one that had been sitting in the same position unmoving for 182 days. The anomaly that had irregular mass distribution, the kind of irregularity real asteroids do not produce, because real asteroids do not have active power cores. Sir, he said very quietly, I think the footnote becomes relevant now. Marcus turned, followed Kelrick's gesture to the sensor display, saw the highlighted contact. An asteroid with unusual composition. Noted. It has been there for months, yes. Yes, sir. Then it is not a threat. It is geology. Proceed with attack plan. The weapon stations lit up. 14 warships powered their targeting systems simultaneously. Strike craft in the carriers went to launch ready status. The fleet arranged itself with the practiced precision of a military force that has done this many times before and expects the same result they always get. Kelrick gripped his console and felt his secondary heart, the Vorkai had too, a redundancy from their evolutionary past, begin to beat faster. This is it, he thought. This is the moment. This is when they learn. In the asteroid belt 4 light minutes from Armstrong Station, something that had been pretending to be a rock for 182 days received an encrypted message. Quantum locked. Priority Alpha. Authorization code recognized. Deep inside its hull, automated systems began their wake sequence. Power cores that had been running at a 2% capacity for half a year ramped up to 20%. Then 50, then full. Stealth fields that had been bending light and gravity around a 2.3-kilometer hull for 6 months analyzed the tactical situation with processing power that exceeded most planetary defense networks. Threat assessment complete. Response authorization confirmed. Target priority established. On the bridge, and it was a bridge with crew stations and command chairs and 847 human souls who had been living in enforced quiet for half a year, speaking in whispers, moving in soft shoes. Waiting for exactly this moment, Captain Lyra Castellan sat in her command chair and read the message from Dorian Kane. She was 45 years old, compact, athletic, had been a Navy JAG lawyer before transferring to Combat Command 20 years ago, had sharp eyes, graying hair tied back in a regulation bun, and a coffee cup on the arm of her chair that had gone cold 3 hours ago and would stay cold because she would finish it anyway. Waste felt wrong. She read the message twice. Looked at the tactical display showing 14 Vorkai warships in attack formation, around a civilian station. Did math that was brutally simple. Then she looked at her tactical officer, Lieutenant Derek Webb. Young, eager, idealistic in the way junior officers are before they see what war actually looks like. Opinions, she asked. They're targeting civilians, ma'am. 312 non-combatants. Correct. Helm bring us to full combat status. Weapons begin target acquisition on all 14 contacts. Comms prepare transmission on Vorkai military frequencies. Yes, ma'am. And disable the stealth field. I want them to see us. There was a pause, just a heartbeat. The bridge crew had been quiet for so long that the idea of being loud again felt strange. Then, stealth field disabling in 3, 2, 1, the field collapsed. And the thing that had been an asteroid for 182 days stopped pretending. It did not arrive the way warships arrive. There was no dramatic bloom of an FTL exit point, no elegant deceleration burn of a vessel orienting itself to a new location. No warning, no buildup. It simply became visible because it had been there the entire time, and it had simply stopped pretending otherwise. On the bridge of eternal supremacy, every single console lit up simultaneously. Alarms in 3 different tones. Sensor readings that scrolled faster than Kelrick could track them. The main display updated with information that made no sense, could not be real, violated every assumption about scale and mass and tactical positioning. Marcus stared at it. For the first time in 30 years of command, for the first time in a career that had spanned 6 conquered systems and 11 subjugated worlds, for the first time in his entire life, Commander Marcus Thrain said, "What is that?" The thing that appeared was enormous. Not large the way a carrier is large, with the functional bulk of hangars and crew quarters and support systems. It was large the way a geological feature is large. Large in a way that made the nearby Vorkai warships seem like they had gotten the scale of existence slightly wrong. 2.3 kilometers of layered scarred hull, textured like something that has been in service for a long time and has no interest in looking pretty. Gun emplacements, 14 of them, Kelrick counted, automatically rotated on its surface with a slowness that was somehow more threatening than speed. The way a very large and very calm animal turning to look at you is more frightening than something that screams. The designation painted on its hull was visible now. Clear. Deliberate. U.E.N. Relentless. "Sir Coim," Kelrick said, and his voice had gone very quiet, very calm. The voice of someone who has been proven catastrophically correct and takes no joy in it. That is the footnote. Marcus could not look away from the display. His 3 eyes tracked the readings. Mass 18 million tons, length 2,300 meters. Energy signature, active fusion cores running at what appeared to be 60% capacity, which meant there was 40% more, which meant this was not even trying yet. How long has it been there? Sensor archive shows the gravitational anomaly appeared 182 days ago, sir. 6 months. It had been sitting there for 6 months, while Vorkai scouts had mapped this system, while intelligence analysts had cataloged every rock and debris field, while Marcus himself had reviewed the tactical data and seen nothing worth noting. Because it had been hiding, perfectly, completely, waiting. The communications station chirped, a transmission, on Vorkai military frequencies, in perfect Vorkai standard language, not translated, perfect, which meant someone somewhere had studied them, had learned their language, had prepared for this exact moment. The voice that came through was female, calm, had the particular quality of someone who has done this before and considers it administrative. "Vorkai Fleet, this is Captain Lyra Castellan of the United Earth Navy vessel Relentless. You are currently targeting a civilian research installation under the protection of the United Earth Navy. I am going to ask you to stand down once." A pause, brief, measured. "I have found in my experience that once is usually sufficient." Marcus looked at his weapons officer. The weapons officer, a veteran of 15 engagements, a male named Torvus, who had never shown fear in combat, looked back at his commander with something very close to terror in all 3 eyes. The bridge was silent except for the ambient hum of systems. The crew waited. They had trained for this, drilled for scenarios where they faced superior numbers or better positioning or unexpected complications. None of them had drilled for this. Target it, Marcus said. His voice was steady, command voice. The voice that had ordered planetary bombardments and fleet actions and the kind of decisions that shape history, but underneath it, buried deep where only he could hear, it was something he had never felt before. Doubt. Sir, Torvis said, all ships, target that vessel, full barrage, every weapon, coordinate with the carriers. I want strike craft in the air. I want every gun we have brought to bear on that ship. Sir, engaging an unknown contact without, now Torvis, because Marcus understood something in that moment. Something fundamental, something that came from 30 years of military experience and an instinct honed across 100 battles. Half measures would not work here. If they were going to do this, if they were going to engage this thing that had been hiding in the dark for 6 months, they could not hesitate, could not probe, could not test. They had to hit it with everything at once and hope pray to whatever gods the Vorkai had abandoned when they evolved past superstition that everything would be enough. The fleet obeyed. 14 warships aligned their weapon systems, targeting solutions calculated in milliseconds. Fire control computers synchronized across the battle group. In the bellies of the 2 carrier strike craft launched in waves, 87 fighters. Small, fast-armed, with missiles designed to punch through capital ship armor. The Vorkai fleet had conquered 6 systems with this kind of firepower, had broken planetary defenses, had made entire civilizations kneel. Space lit up. Every weapon fired at once. Particle beams that could carve through mountains. Missiles that could level cities. Kinetic rounds moving at significant fractions of light speed. A coordinated barrage that represented the accumulated military might of an empire that had never known defeat. The display showed it all. Every shot tracked. Every impact calculated. 340 megatons of directed energy and kinetic force converging on a single target. The Relentless did not dodge. It did not evade. It simply took it. The hull lit up, sections scorched under the barrage. Armor plating, and it was armor. Kelric could see it now, could see the way the outer hull was layered and overlapping plates absorbed impacts that should have penetrated. Should have torn through to the vulnerable systems beneath. The strike craft reached it, 87 fighters unloading missiles at point-blank range. Explosions blossomed across the Relentless's hull like flowers made of fire. And the Relentless held. Damage control reports scrolled across Kelric's screen. He read them with the detached horror of someone watching a disaster unfold in slow motion. Hull integrity, 97.3%. Shield status active. Minimal drain. Casualty estimate, 0. The barrage lasted 40 seconds. 40 seconds of sustained fire from 14 warships and 87 strike craft. Enough firepower to glass a continent. When it ended, when the capacitors ran dry and the missile tubes emptied and the guns fell silent, the Relentless floated in the black, scarred but unbroken. And then it replied. Not all at once. That would have been wasteful. And Captain Lyra Castellan Kelric would learn later was not a wasteful person. The Relentless fired once, a single railgun round, magnetically accelerated to velocities that made the ship shudder with the recoil. No explosive warhead, just mass and speed and physics. It hit Eternal Supremacy's primary engine cluster. The impact was surgical, precise. The engines did not explode. They simply ceased to function. Power plants shut down in emergency protocols. Thrust dropped to 0. Marcus felt the deck shudder beneath his feet. Felt his ship, his flagship, his command for 8 years go from a warship to a drifting hulk in the span of 3 seconds. Engines offline, someone shouted. All maneuvering capability lost. Casualties, Marcus asked. His voice was automatic. Training. Engineering reports 23 injured from the impact shock. No fatalities. The round, sir, it missed every crew compartment. Hit only the engines. Only the engines. Marcus stared at the tactical display, at the Relentless, at the ship that had just disabled his flagship with a single shot while taking a full barrage from his entire fleet without meaningful damage. 15 seconds passed. The Relentless fired again. Ship 4, the cruiser Iron Determination, lost its weapons array. Guns went dark. Missile tubes sealed. In an instant, a warship became a spectator. 15 seconds. Ship 7, Shield generators offline. 15 seconds. Ships 9 and 11 struck simultaneously. Both lost propulsion. The pattern was clear now. Brutal in its clarity, the Relentless was not destroying them, it was dismantling them. Taking away capability piece by piece. Engines, weapons, shields, every shot placed with the kind of precision that spoke to complete tactical superiority. And it was doing it slowly, deliberately, with 15-second pauses between strikes. Not because it needed to recharge. Kelrick could see the power readings. The Relentless was firing at what appeared to be 0.3% of its total output. It could fire faster, it could fire more. It was choosing not to. It was choosing to let them wait, let them watch, let them understand exactly how hopeless their situation was. Marcus gripped the arms of his command throne. Around him, his bridge crew worked with the desperate efficiency of people who know they are losing but have not been given permission to stop. Strike craft status. Unable to penetrate the target's hull, sir. Missiles they're just scorching the armor. No breaches, no meaningful damage. Fleet status. 3 vessels completely non-operational. 4 reporting major weapons failure. 2 have lost maneuvering. Shields across the fleet are at 40% and falling. Sir, we're being taken apart. Kelrick looked at his console, looked at the data streaming in, looked at the Relentless's targeting pattern, and felt something cold settle in his chest. Sir, he said quietly, they're targeting us in order of threat assessment. Marcus turned. Explain. The ships they've hit, the systems they've disabled, it's not random. They have a complete tactical database. They know our ship classes, our capabilities, our weaknesses. They're removing our most dangerous vessels first, then working down the list. How could they possibly? They've been studying us, sir, for years, maybe decades. Every encounter, every border skirmish, every trade negotiation. They were watching, learning, building a database of everything we are and everything we can do. And the implication hit Marcus like a physical blow. The humans had been sandbagging in every previous encounter, in every diplomatic meeting, in every military exercise where human and Vorkai forces had observed each other. The humans had been holding back, hiding their capabilities, pretending to be less advanced, less capable, less dangerous than they actually were. All so that when this moment came, when someone made the catastrophic mistake of attacking their civilians, the response would be total, complete, overwhelming, a lesson that would never be forgotten. Kelrick, Marcus said. His voice was very quiet now, very calm. The voice of a man who has done the math and does not like the numbers. The footnote, what exactly did it say? Kelrick had been waiting for this question for 3 years, since he first read the intelligence file, since he first saw that buried note on page 412, since he first tried to warn his commander and was dismissed as dramatic. He pulled up the file on his console, read it aloud, every word. Humanity responds to attacks on civilian installations with a level of force that is, and this is a direct quote not bound by proportionality conventions of any known interstellar agreement. This is because humanity has not signed any such agreement. He paused. Let that sink in. When presented with the Galactic Proportionality Conventions at the 2267 Interspecies Summit, human delegates read the proportionality clauses governing civilian military response ratios, and then laughed. Marcus turned to look at him. They laughed. For 17 minutes, sir, the laughter was described by attendees as uncomfortable, unhinged, and somehow more threatening than any weapon demonstration they had witnessed. Continue. When asked why they found it amusing, the human delegate Ambassador Victoria Hayes of Earth stated, and I quote, "You are asking a species that once dropped 2 atomic bombs to end a war, then felt bad about it for 80 years to sign a paper saying, we will only use proportional force. Do you want us to lie to you? Because we can lie. We are very good at lying. But when someone shoots our civilians, we do not do proportional. We do permanent. And then we feel bad about it later. That is the deal." Kelrick looked at his commander, at the male who had dismissed his warnings, who had ignored the footnote, who had led 14 warships into a trap. The human delegation then declined to sign. The file's recommendation is clear, sir. Do not engage human civilian installations. See all previous pages for supporting evidence. Then read them again. Marcus absorbed this, processed it, understood finally what Kelrick had been trying to tell him. They had not attacked 300 scientists. They had attacked 300 civilians under the protection of a species that considered harm to civilians a trigger for total war. A species that had built ships like the Relentless specifically for this scenario. A species that had been waiting patient and prepared for someone to make exactly this mistake. They are not even angry, Marcus whispered. No, sir. We attacked their people, destroyed their property, and they are treating this as a scheduling inconvenience. That appears to be an accurate characterization, sir. A long silence settled over the bridge. The kind of silence that comes when everyone realizes the same terrible thing at the same moment. The Relentless fired again. Ship 12 lost its communication array. Marcus watched it happen, watched his fleet being systematically dismantled by a single vessel that had absorbed their best weapons and found them mildly inconvenient. He thought about his career. 30 years, 6 systems, 11 worlds, a perfect record, about to end in the most spectacular failure in Vorkai military history, all because he had not read a footnote. Sir, Kelrick said, we need to retreat. We cannot retreat. We are the Vorkai Empire. We do not retreat from 300 scientists and miners. With respect, sir, Kelrick's voice was very gentle now, almost kind. We are not retreating from the scientists and miners. We would be retreating from that. He pointed at the display, at the Relentless, which was now turning slightly, not because it needed to for weapons targeting, but because 3 of the Vorkai warships had attempted to flank it, and the Relentless had apparently found this interesting enough to acknowledge. Marcus stared at the battle display for a long moment, did math that he had never expected to do, calculated odds that should not exist. 9 ships remaining with even partial capability against 1 vessel that had just taken the full firepower of his entire fleet and was now casually dismantling them piece by piece. The math had not changed in their favor. He looked at Kelrick, at the officer who had tried to warn him, who had read the files, who had understood what Marcus in his arrogance had refused to see. You were right about the footnote, Marcus said quietly. Yes, sir. Have I ever admitted I was wrong before? No, sir, not in 20 years of service. Marcus stood. The movement felt heavy, final. He walked to the center of the bridge, looked at his crew, at the people who had followed him into 6 campaigns and trusted his judgment without question, and said 4 words he had never in his life expected to say. Signal a full retreat. The bridge went very still. Sir, Torvis said, you heard me? All ships capable of independent propulsion are to jump to FTOL immediately. Destination Vorkai Prime. Ships without engines are to be towed if possible. If not possible, crews are to be evacuated and the vessels abandoned. Sir, that is an order. The communications went out. Across the fleet, commanders who had never retreated from anything in their careers received orders that rewrote everything they thought they knew about Vorkai superiority. 9 ships began emergency jump preparations. 2 dead vessels were taken in tow. 1, the destroyer, Endless Valor, too damaged to move, and too far from help, began evacuating its crew to neighboring ships. 312 souls transferring in small craft, while their ship, their home, their pride was left behind as salvage. Marcus watched it happen, watched his fleet break and run, and felt something he had never felt before. Shame. The Relentless did not pursue. It simply watched, patient, calm, as 9 Vorkai warships jumped to FTL and vanished, leaving behind 2 towed hulls and 1 abandoned destroyer, and the shattered remnants of their confidence. Marcus stood on his bridge as the stars shifted. As his ship powerless, being pulled by the cruiser, Determination was dragged into FTL transit. 41 minutes of silence followed. 41 minutes where no one spoke, where the only sound was the ambient hum of life support and the occasional creak of hull plating stressed by towing forces. 41 minutes for Marcus to think about the decision he had made, the warnings he had ignored, the footnote he had refused to read. 41 minutes to understand that his career was over. And the worst part, the part that would haunt him for the rest of his life, was that he had brought this on himself. The Relentless had given him a choice: stand down, walk away, learn the lesson without bloodshed, He had chosen violence. And the humans, in their measured and methodical way, had taught him exactly what violence looked like when you pointed it at the wrong species. Somewhere ahead through the warped space of FT, Transit Vorkai Prime waited. Home. Safety. The place where he would have to explain how he had lost 14 warships to a single enemy vessel. How he had attacked 300 unarmed civilians and been crushed by the response. How he had not read the footnote. Marcus sat in his command throne and stared at nothing and felt the weight of the coming shame settle onto his shoulders like a physical thing. Behind him, Kelrick worked his console in silence and thought about the other thing in the footnote, the thing he had not mentioned yet, the thing that made this so much worse. The Relentless was not alone. There were 12 ships like it. The file had said so. 12 Apex-class strategic response platforms scattered across human space. One had been enough to break them. He wondered with the cold clarity of someone who has seen the shape of the future what 12 could do. He wondered if they were about to find out. The Vorkai fleet dropped out of FTL at the edge of their home system, and for a brief moment there was relief. Vorkai Prime filled the forward screens, pale and perfect, ringed by its 3 moons. The capital world of an empire that spanned 11 planets and 6 conquered systems. Home to 4.2 billion souls who had never known invasion, never known fear, never known what it meant to lose. Marcus stood on the bridge of eternal supremacy, still being towed, still powerless, still a monument to his failure, and felt something almost like peace. They had made it home. They had survived. The worst was over. Then Kelrick looked at the long-range sensors, and the worst began. "Commander," Kelrick's voice was very quiet, very careful, the voice of someone delivering news that will change everything. "There is something in this system that was not here when we left." Marcus turned, slowly, already knowing on some instinctual level that whatever Kelrick was about to show him would be terrible. The display updated. Sensor contacts resolved from a blur to clarity, the way a photograph develops in chemicals. Detail emerging in a progression that felt to everyone watching deeply and personally unfair. It was not one ship. It was not a traditional fleet formation, either, because fleets have structure. Coordination, the tight geometry of vessels that need to communicate and maneuver in concert. What filled Vorkai space did not have formation. It had presence. 31 vessels spread across the system with the casual confidence of people who have already decided how this ends and are now just waiting for the paperwork. Not clustered, not defensive, simply there, positioned at every major orbital approach, every FTL exit point, every place where a fleet might try to run. The smallest was still larger than the largest Vorkai warship. The largest was the Relentless. Marcus stared at the display, counted the contacts, recounted them, tried to make the numbers make sense in a universe that had suddenly stopped following rules. "How clear," he said. "Just that. One word." Kelrick pulled up the navigation data, did calculations that should not have been necessary because they violated every understanding of FTL travel that the Vorkai possessed. "Sir, the Relentless left Armstrong Station after we did. We had a 30-minute head start. The distance to Vorkai Prime from that system is approximately 48 light-years. At standard military FTL speeds, the journey should take 4 hours. He paused, let Marcus do the math. "We were in transit for 41 minutes. They arrived before us, which means," he trailed off, "which means their FTL capability is approximately 4 times faster than ours." Marcus finished. The words tasted like ash. "They have been lying about their speed." "Not lying, sir, sandbagging, in every encounter, every border patrol, every joint exercise where we observe their fleet movements. They have been operating at a quarter of their actual capability. Deliberately, so that we would not know, so that when this moment came, we would be surprised." Marcus looked at the display, at 31 ships that should not be here yet, that had traveled faster than physics should allow, that had beaten a fleet with a head start to its own homeworld. "How long," he asked quietly, "how long have they been hiding this unknown, sir? But given the level of coordination required to maintain this kind of operational security across their entire Navy, years, possibly decades. Decades. Decades of humans pretending to be slower than they were. weaker than they were, less advanced than they were. All so that when someone made the mistake Marcus had just made, the response would be total, overwhelming, impossible to miss. A lesson written in starship hulls and shattered confidence. The communications station chirped. A transmission. On the same frequency Captain Lyra Castellan had used before, in the same perfect Vorkai. Marcus closed his three eyes, opened them, faced the thing he had been dreading. Put it through. The voice came through calm, professional. A teacher addressing a student who has failed a test. Commander Thrain, this is Captain Castellan again. I want to start by saying I appreciate that you chose to withdraw rather than continue the engagement. That decision reflects well on you personally, and I have noted it in my report. A pause, brief, measured. I also want to say that what happens next is not personal. It is, however, necessary. Marcus felt his crew watching him, waiting for his response, waiting for him to do something, say something, be the commander they had followed for 30 years. He had nothing. You followed us, he said. His voice sounded hollow to his own ears. We did. Standard procedure when an attack on a civilian installation cannot be attributed to rogue actors. Your fleet departed from a Vorkai military staging point, which indicates the attack was sanctioned at an imperial level. Therefore, the response is also at an imperial level. You are threatening our homeworld. I am not threatening anything, Commander. I am explaining a process. There is a difference. The distinction landed like a blade. Precise. Cutting. The process, Castellan continued, is that we have transmitted a full record of today's events to your planetary government, along with a list of conditions. The conditions are being reviewed right now by whoever makes decisions on Vorkai Prime. We are waiting for a response. Kelrick leaned toward Marcus, whispered, she transmitted to the planetary government, not to fleet command, not to military authority, directly to civilian leadership. Marcus understood immediately. She was going over the military's head, going to the people who could authorize a political resolution, who had the authority to surrender not just a fleet, but an entire empire. Which means, Kelrick continued very quietly, she does not want to fight. She wants a surrender, from someone with the power to make it permanent. Or she wants both, Marcus thought. She already has both. His fleet was broken, 9 damaged ships with 6,200 crew against 31 human vessels with crews that probably numbered in the tens of thousands. Behind him, 4.2 billion civilians on a world that had never built planetary defenses because the Vorkai had always won their wars in space, because they had never faced an enemy like this. Marcus sat in his command throne. The movement was slow, heavy. He had not sat during active operations in 11 years. It was a point of pride. Commanders stand, commanders project strength. But his legs had made the decision without consulting him. He sat and felt the weight of the coming hours settle onto him like gravity. What are the conditions, he asked, on Vorkai Prime in the Hall of Imperial Governance, a building made of stone, 600 years old with floors polished by generations of feet, and windows that looked out over the capital city where 4 million souls lived in blissful ignorance of the fleet above them. High Consul Varen Kell read the fastest arriving and most alarming diplomatic communication of his 400-year career. Varen was old even by Vorkai standards. His skin had taken on the pale blue tint that came with extreme age. His movements were slow, deliberate, conserved. He had guided the empire through 2 civil wars, 1 succession crisis and a diplomatic incident involving a trade gift that was culturally appropriate in one context and a profound insult in another. He had never dealt with 31 warships in his home system, while their captain explained in perfect Vorkai the terms under which his civilization would be permitted to continue existing. The message was long, detailed, written with legal precision, every condition numbered, every consequence of non-compliance stated plainly without embellishment, without threat, in the same flat descriptive language you might use to explain how a machine operates. Condition 1. The Vorkai Empire would acknowledge that Armstrong Station and the system it occupied was human territory under the Outer Colonial Protection Act. Condition 2. The Vorkai Empire would provide full reparations for damage caused during the attack. Itemized. Attached as Appendix A, Varen opened the appendix, read it carefully. Station structural repair. 2,300,000 credits. Destroyed scientific equipment, 470,000 credits. Hazard compensation for station personnel, 15,600 credits. Dr. Elena Rourke's ruined geological core samples, 8,000 credits. Total 2,793,600 credits. The number was oddly specific, legally precise, not a round figure designed to humiliate, an actual accounting of actual damages. This was not a conqueror's ransom. This was an invoice. Condition 3 military officers who authorized the attack would be remanded for trial under whatever internal Vorkai judicial process the Empire preferred, provided the charges included unprovoked aggression against a civilian installation and provided the process was transparent and documented. Varen read this twice. They were not demanding custody, not insisting on their own courts. They were respecting Vorkai sovereignty, allowing internal justice, but demanding transparency. Condition 4, the Vorkai Empire would enter into a formal non-aggression framework with humanity. Terms attached as Appendix B. Varen opened Appendix with the caution of someone expecting poison, found instead a framework that was strict but not punitive. Clear borders, dispute resolution mechanisms, trade continuation, joint security protocols, a treaty between equals, not a surrender document, a treaty. And then at the end of the message, a paragraph that made Varen's secondary heart skip. These conditions are fair, and we believe you know they are fair. We are not here because we enjoy this. We are here because one of your fleet commanders decided that 300 scientists and miners were an acceptable target, and we want to make sure this specific decision is never made again by anyone operating under your flag. We are not your enemies. We are your reminder. You have 72 of your hours to respond. We will wait. Varen read it 3 times. Then he called an emergency session of the full governing council. 40 minutes later, 47 consuls sat in the hall of deliberation. The oldest was Varen himself at 400. The youngest was barely 60, fresh from election, still believing in the propaganda. The chamber was circular, tiered, designed so that every voice could be heard. Right now, every voice wanted to be heard at once. This is an outrage. Consul Marin, tier leader of the military faction, stood with all 4 arms raised in indignation. They have violated our sovereignty, invaded our system, made demand backed by naked force. They are in our system, Varen said quietly from his seat at the chamber center, because we attack their station, cause meat effect. They are demanding we surrender officers for trial. They are demanding we hold officers accountable for attacking civilians. There is a difference. We should reject these terms, mobilize the fleet, show them that the Vorkai Empire does not bow to threats. Silence fell. Everyone looked at Marin, then slowly at Varen. Varen stood. The movement took time. 400 years sat heavy on bones. But when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. Consul Marin, may I ask a question? Of course, High Consul. How many ships do we currently have in Vorkai space? Approximately 140 vessels, sir. The home fleet. And how many ships do the humans have in our system right now? A pause. 31. Correct, 31. Now let me share something interesting. Varen pulled up a data pad, read from it. Our remaining battle group from the Armstrong Station engagement consists of 9 damaged vessels with limited combat capability. They encountered 1 human ship. 1. That ship absorbed the full firepower of 14 warships and 87 strike fighters. It then systematically disabled our fleet with surgical precision while sustaining negligible damage. He looked around the chamber. 1 ship did that. The humans have 31 here. Tell me, Consul Marin, how do you propose we mobilize a fleet against an enemy that can destroy us 4 times over with what they have already deployed? Silence. Furthermore, Varen continued, let me share what they have not done. They have not bombarded our cities. They have not demanded territory. They have not insisted on regime change. They have not taken hostages. They have not killed a single Vorkai civilian despite having 31 warships in position to do exactly that. He sat, let the words settle. What they have done is asked for an apology, compensation for damages, accountability for the officer who made this catastrophic decision, in a treaty that allows both our peoples to coexist peacefully. This is not a conqueror's terms. This is a neighbor's terms. A neighbor we foolishly decided to punch. Consul Pelawin, leader of the diplomatic faction, stood. Then you propose we accept. I propose we do better than accept. I propose we show them we understand. The debate lasted 6 hours. 3 factions emerged. The Hawks, led by Marin, wanted rejection, mobilization, war. The Doves, led by Pella, wanted acceptance, full compliance, apology. The Pragmatists, led by Varin, wanted something else. In the end, the vote was clear. Accept all 4 conditions, 38 in favor, 2 opposed. But Varin had one more proposal, one that he had drafted himself during the debate, one that none of the human conditions had demanded. I propose we add a 5th condition, our own, unprompted. The chamber went quiet. We establish a joint review committee for future territorial claims and contested systems. Independent arbitration, transparent process. We prevent this from happening again, not because the humans demand it, but because we choose to, because we have learned. The vote on the 5th condition was closer, 28 in favor, 12 opposed. But it passed. Varin drafted the response himself. He had written many difficult communications in 400 years. This one was in some ways the easiest, because there was genuinely only one thing to say. He accepted all 4 conditions, added the 5th, and included a paragraph of his own. We acknowledge our error in the justice of your response. The 5th condition we add demonstrates our commitment to preventing recurrence through structural reform, not merely compliance with imposed terms. We hope this shows good faith. He sent it 61 hours after receiving the human ultimatum, 11 hours early, and waited. Aboard the Relentless, Captain Lyra Castellan read the Vorkai response in her ready room. A small space, functional, a desk with a terminal. A coffee maker that produced mediocre results. A viewport showing Vorkai Prime pale and beautiful against the black. She read the message once. Slowly, noted the 5th condition, the unprompted addition, the structural thinking it represented. She picked up her coffee. It had gone cold 2 hours ago. She drank it anyway. Then she walked to the bridge. Lieutenant Derek Webb looked up from tactical. Ma'am, prepare a response. 4 sentences. She dictated it standing, no notes, no rehearsal. We accept your response and commend the additional condition you included. The 5th condition demonstrates exactly the kind of structural thinking that prevents these situations from becoming cycles. The fleet will begin withdrawal from your system within the hour. We look forward to formal treaty negotiations which our diplomatic corps will initiate through standard channels. Webb stared at her. That's it. That's it. Ma'am, we had 31 ships in their home system. We could have what, Lieutenant? She turned to look at him. Her expression was not unkind. It was the expression of a teacher who has asked this question before and is genuinely interested in the answer. Webb thought about it. More consequences, more reparations, more territory. And in 40 years, when the Vorkai have rebuilt their fleet and nursed 3 generations of resentment, we would have gotten more of something else too. Something messier. Something that costs more to resolve than we gained in the first place. She walked to the viewport, looked at Vorkai Prime. They made a mistake, a big one. We made sure they understood the scale of that mistake. Then we gave them a way forward that does not require them to hate us to survive it. That's how this works. When it works. She turned back to her crew. Begin withdrawal, signal Armstrong Station that the situation is resolved. They can go back to their rocks. And someone tell Dorian Kane he gets the triumphant feeling. We just did our jobs. The 31 ships began their orderly withdrawal, professional, scheduled, like workers clocking out at the end of a shift. Marcus watched them go from his crippled flagship, watched them leave his system with the same casual confidence they had entered it, watched the Relentless last to leave, ensuring all others were safe first make its jump to FTL, and felt something shift inside him. Understanding. Finally, they had never wanted to conquer. They had wanted to teach. And the lesson was simple: attack our civilians, face overwhelming force. But survive the lesson, learn from it, become better. Once is usually sufficient. He understood now. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood before a military tribunal. The charges were read: negligence, failure to assess intelligence properly, unauthorized engagement of civilian targets. He did not contest them. The verdict: relieved of command. Demoted to advisory status. New assignment: diplomatic liaison corps. Ironic, appropriate. Marcus accepted without protest. The footnote was right, he told the tribunal. I should have read it. 5 years later, at a joint Vorkai-Human border station, Marcus Thrain met Captain Lyra Castellan face-to-face for the first time. The handshake was awkward. 4 hands to 2. Captain Castellan, Marcus said, I have read your advisory reports on our joint operations. They are excellent. Commander Thrain, Lyra replied, I have read your footnotes, all of them. A pause. Marcus felt something that might have been amusement, an emotion he had once considered wasteful. And, he asked. Lyra almost smiled. You were right. Once was sufficient. They stood in the station observation deck, watched human and Vorkai crews working together on disaster response drills. Former enemies, now rescue partners. I teach now, Marcus said, at the military academy. Advanced threat assessment. The first lesson is always the same, which is how to read what others ignore. Lyra nodded. Good lesson. I learned it from you, the hard way. The hard way is the only way some lessons stick. They stood in companionable silence, 2 people who had been on opposite sides of a very short war, who understood now what that war had actually been about. Not conquest, not glory, teaching. 10 years later, in a classroom on Vorkai Prime, an aging Marcus Thrain stood before a class of young officers. Behind him, a screen displayed a simple image, a footnote, page 412. This, he said, is the most important thing I will ever teach you. Not tactics, not a high strategy. This, he pointed at the screen. Do not engage. See all previous pages. Read them again. A young officer raised one hand. Sir, why didn't the humans destroy our fleet when they could have? Marcus considered the question. Thought about Lyra Castellan, about the Relentless, about 31 ships that could have glassed his homeworld but chose not to, because they already had what they wanted, our attention. He walked to the window, looked out at the city, at the sky where once 31 human warships had waited. The humans have a pattern. 7 times now, 7 different species have attacked their civilians. 7 times the humans have responded with overwhelming force, and 7 times they have shown restraint at the moment of victory. Do you know what all 7 species have in common now? Silence. They are all human allies, trade partners, friends, because the humans understand something we did not, that the best victory is the one where your enemy becomes your partner. That permanent peace is more valuable than temporary conquest. That teaching is more powerful than winning. He turned back to his class. I spent 30 years learning how to win wars. In 47 minutes, Captain Castellan taught me something more important. There is a difference between winning and teaching. Winners create enemies. Teachers create partners. He tapped the screen. I was a winner. She was a teacher. Now I understand why she won. Outside ships move through Vorkai space. Human freighters, Vorkai patrol craft, working together, trading, building something that would last. On Armstrong Station, Dr. Elena Rourke filed her latest paper on peaceside applications, the compound she had discovered during what historians now called the 47-minute war. She requisitioned more coffee. Priority high. The work, as always, was the work. And in the black between stars, the Relentless continued its patrol, waiting, patient, ready to teach the lesson again if necessary, but hoping always that once would be sufficient.